When did you leave a hospital? Afraid for your life? I got hit by a car while crossing the street and ended up in the hospital where I was in more danger all because of one evil woman. I had broken several bones from the accident, but the pain was manageable with medication, but what they served was criminal. My first meal was supposed to be meatloaf, but it looked like compressed cardboard covered in brown water. The green beans were gray, and the mashed potatoes had the consistency of wallpaper paste. When the nurse came to check my vitals, I couldn't help but complain. She was young, with curly brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, and the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. I told her the food was so bad it might kill me faster than the car accident. She laughed and said she understood completely. Her name tag said Queenie, and she promised to see what she could do about getting me something edible. The next day, Queenie showed up during lunch with a small container hidden under some medical charts. She looked around nervously before pulling out the most beautiful grilled cheese sandwich I'd ever seen. The bread was perfectly golden, and butter was still sizzling on the crust. She said she felt bad about my food situation and made it in the break room. We ate together while she told me about her love of cooking. This became our daily routine. Queenie would sneak in homemade food and we'd eat lunch together in my room. She brought soup that actually tasted like vegetables instead of dishwater. Her pasta had real sauce with herbs I could identify. One day she brought chocolate chip cookies that were still warm, and I almost cried from happiness. We talked about everything from movies to our childhood dreams. By the second week, Queenie was bringing full meals in multiple containers. She'd set up a whole spread on my bedside table like we were having a picnic. She brought cloth napkins and real silverware. We'd spend the entire lunch hour together laughing and sharing stories. I found myself looking forward to noon more than anything else, including my pain medication. The food kept getting more elaborate. She brought lasagna that she'd spent 3 hours making the night before. Her fried chicken was better than any restaurant I'd been to. She even brought homemade ice cream in a thermos. I asked how she had time to cook all this while working full shifts, and she just smiled, saying cooking relaxed her after long days. I was falling for Queenie hard. It wasn't just the food, though, that definitely helped. She listened to me complain about physical therapy without judging. She remembered little details from our conversations and asked follow-up questions days later. When I mentioned missing my mom's pot roast, she showed up the next day with her own version that somehow tasted exactly like childhood. 3 weeks into my stay, Queenie seemed extra nervous during lunch. She kept checking the door and jumping at every sound. She'd brought apple pie that smelled like cinnamon heaven and was feeding me a bite when the door burst open. 2 security guards rushed in, followed by 3 police officers. Queenie dropped the fork and her face went completely white. The officers put her in handcuffs while she stared at me with tears streaming down her face. I kept asking what was happening, but nobody would answer. They dragged her out while I sat there completely confused. The security guards sealed off my room and started taking pictures of the food containers like they were evidence at a crime scene. 2 detectives came to question me an hour later. They asked how long I'd known Queenie and if she'd ever mentioned her past. I told them about our lunches and how she was the kindest person I'd met in years. That's when they dropped the bomb. Queenie wasn't a nurse at the hospital. She wasn't even named Queenie. Her real name was Anaya, and she was a convicted felon. The detective explained that Anaya had been sneaking into the hospital wearing stolen scrubs. She'd been part of a gang that ran identity theft schemes and was connected to 7 murders over the past 5 years. She'd escaped prison 6 months ago and had been using the hospital as a place to lay low. They suspected she was planning to move in with me after I got discharged. Everything we'd shared felt like a lie. The detective said she'd probably been gathering information about my finances and family. All those personal questions I thought were sweet were actually reconnaissance. The elaborate meals were just part of her con to make me fall for her so she'd have somewhere to live. They found her real apartment later that day. It was full of fake IDs and stolen credit cards. She had notebooks with information about several patients, including me. My social security number was written next to hearts she'd drawn, which made me feel sick. The detective said I was lucky they caught her before I got discharged because who knows what would have happened. I spent my last week in the hospital eating the terrible cafeteria food and trying to process everything. Part of me wondered if any of our connection was real. She'd seemed so genuine when we talked and laughed together. But then I remembered she was a convicted killer who'd been planning to use me. She was crazy, but a part of me still wanted that. Queenie, if you're reading this, I miss you. You can do whatever you want with my money. Just keep on cooking me meals and do that butt thing I like in the dark.